So I'd like to say a big welcome to everybody here this evening to Childline by ISPCC's webinar, Supporting Your Child's Transition to Secondary School. The webinar this evening aims to give you information on how to support your child's move from primary to secondary. These big life changes can be really exciting, but we also acknowledge that they can be very daunting as well. And the move from primary to secondary school is one of the biggest challenges that Ireland's children will face in their academic careers. My name is Siobhan Harvey, and I'm the parenting lead with ISPCC Childline. Also joining me on the webinar this evening are my colleagues Niamh Clarke, Community Engagement Manager with responsibility for the Smart Moves School Transition Programme, and Victoria Howson, Community Engagement Manager for our SHIELD Anti-Bullying Programme, and also a trainee Educational Psychologist with the HSE. So we know from our Childline listening service that school-related issues can be a big stressor for children. Childline receives around 100 contacts a month about school-related issues, placing it within our top 10 reasons for children and young people contacting the service. Approximately 2 to 4 calls per week come through on new school worries, where 44% of these have a mental well-being element to the contacts. And understandably, these are calls peak in August and September, and most commonly from the age range between 12 and 14 years old. And interestingly, usually they're female users. I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time out and being here with us this evening. In a moment, I'm going to talk a little bit about ISPCC services and programmes on offer before I introduce you to Niamh and Victoria, who are going to talk to you this evening. Firstly, just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So you may notice that you're all placed on mute and cameras turned off, and it will stay that way for the duration of the webinar this evening. We will be having a Q&A at the end of the session, so if you have any questions during the webinar, send them into the Q&A section on the top, and we'll get to as many as possible. If we don't answer your question or you feel you don't want to ask one here this evening, that's absolutely fine. Feel free to contact us afterwards for more information. Our contact details will be shown at the end as well. And just a reminder to everybody here this evening that tonight's webinar will be recorded and made available on ISPCC platforms. So a little bit about ISPCC and the services that we offer to children and young people. We're probably most well known for our Childline listening service, which is a 24/7 service available to all children and young people up to and including the age of 18. And this is via phone and also via chat. We have our Ask the Team service, which is for children and young people, where they can ask us a question about anything they want. There's nothing too big or too small. We have our Childline Therapeutic Support Service, which provides therapeutic support to young people, children and families. And we can meet them wherever they feel most comfortable. So this might be online, in their home, in a community centre or their school. And this service is available in various locations throughout the country. Our Smart Moves is our school transition programme, which aims to support the emotional resilience of children as they prepare to transition from primary to secondary school. And that's why we're all here this evening. SHIELD then is our anti-bullying programme, which aims to support any organisations that work with young people in their efforts to proactively manage bullying. Then we have various programmes, digital mental health and well-being, and these are aimed at reducing anxiety for children and young people. And we also have digital programmes for parents and carers around managing their own anxiety while supporting their anxious child or anxious teen. Some of our parenting supports include our Parenting Hub on the ISPCC website, and this publishes articles in relation to parenting and parenting supports with lots of different topics. We also have our Digital Ready Hub, which is a trusted destination for information on how you can support children and young people to have positive experiences online. We have a support line, which is a listening service offering information, advice and emotional support to parents and carers. And you can call in and ring between 9 and 1 Monday to Friday by calling 01 522 4300. And similar to our Ask the Team, we've got our Ask Robin service for parents where you can contact us in relation to any parenting queries and we'll post back an answer. And finally, lastly, in relation to the services, delighted to say that Vodafone Ireland Foundation has partnered with DCU Anti-Bullying Centre and Childline by ISPCC to develop and launch TOSI, an app aimed at creating a safer, more positive online space for young people. It aims to educate, empower and support young people with the tools and advice that they need to have a more positive online experience delivered through engaging features within the app. Now that is a whistle-stop tour of all ISPCC services and programmes. So if you do want to know any more about any of those, you can log on to www.ispcc.ie. I am now going to hand over to Niamh and to Victoria, and this evening they are going to talk through this transition period with tips on preparing your child from a resilience focus lens. They will also look at the challenges your child may face and how they can be supported to overcome them. And they will also be looking at support for those children with special educational needs. And a reminder, we will have a Q&A at the end if you have any questions for Niamh and Victoria. So very warm welcome, Niamh. Delighted to be here this evening with you.
Thanks, Siobhan. As you all know, the move to secondary school can be a really exciting time, and I'm sure there's lots of your young people that are very excited about it. Perhaps secondary school is and the environment is going to suit your child better. I know personally myself, I loved being able to move around the classroom or around the class and the school and the change of teacher. However, we also know that for some it can be a time of great stress, and for you parents too. After all, it involves a big adjustment in terms of new subjects, teachers, routines, and social dynamics. And depending on where you are in the country, there may have even been a waiting time to confirm school places. So I just hope that this is settled for most of you at this point and that you now feel ready to prepare your child, and dare I say it, yourself, for this big move. It's important to also acknowledge that this isn't just a change for your child, but it's also a big change for you as a parent, particularly if this is the first experience you have of this school move. We know in the ISPCC that when a parent feels relaxed and calm and supported, that this does have a ripple down effect to your child. So I just want to start by giving you a little bit of research behind the transition period. So the World Health Organization and UNICEF have recognised that the transition between primary and secondary school is a significant change in the life of a child. Both of these bodies recommend providing adequate support and guidance to children during this transformative phase. It's recognised that meaningful supports for children who are making this transition have been well documented, and research indicates that these pre-prepared programmes and established supports can help make the transition easier for pupils, and that young people can benefit and do benefit from more practical support and communication during this transition period. We also know that unfortunately there's been a steady increase in anxiety related issues for our young people. According to the National Study of Youth Mental Health in Ireland, 72% of young people identify school as the main stressor in their lives. And a particular stressful aspect of school for young people can be this transition period from primary to secondary school, which correlates to the Childline listening figures Siobhan mentioned at the beginning. The good news is researchers have found that implementation of transition practices have a very positive impact on a child's academic achievement. At present, there isn't a formalised national transition programme in Ireland for children moving from 6th class to 1st year. ISPCC do provide schools with the Smart Move School Transition Programme, along with many parental webinars on topics we find through all our Childline services are impacting on young people and their parents of that age. And we'll provide this later on in the talk. So what we're really aiming for here this evening is to discuss this transition from a resilience focused lens and understand how you as a parent or the carer can support your child through this important stage. Children carry both positive and negative experiences with them when they transition to secondary school. And as well as they have their possible worries about going into a new school. What we need to do as a parent is to support them with this change and help them to develop these coping skills. Change is something all of us here at some stage are going to, it's going to happen for us at some stage. And it's about how we learn to cope with this change and having the skills to navigate our ways through it. So while for now the big thing is transitioning to school in 6 months or a year, it could be something completely different. And by equipping your child with the skills to deal with this change, you're teaching them a life tool and you're strengthening their resilience. Resilience is quite often a buzzword that's thrown out there. So just to give a little bit of information around it or a little bit of learning around it, it's defined as the ability to cope or bounce back from a difficult situation. So while as parents we desperately want to protect our children from having these negative experiences, that doesn't always happen. And some situations are completely unavoidable, just like maybe the death of a loved one, or quite often at this age in particular, a fallout with a friend. Your child might feel more stressed or anxious because of such experiences. They may even be getting angry with people or crying more than normal. That's okay. Being resilient means finding a way to manage these feelings and help them to get through them. So, what's really important is how we as parents and carers support our children to deal with these experiences. The good thing is that there's lots and lots you can do to help to strengthen your child's resilience. And it's not something you either have or you don't have. Resilience is definitely something that can be built at any stage of life, and you can never be too young or too old to start doing this. So I would say start now with yourself and with your child. So a little bit of understanding about what might be going on for your child at this time. And you can see my lovely magic 8-ball wheel up there on the screen, because there is so much going on for them. And I'm sure this list could be lengthened even further. It's a time, this transition period comes at a time of great change and growth and development, not just mentally, but physically and socially for our children. And then you add in the upheaval of a new school, and added independence, which is a natural and expected part of the process. It can all lead to a perfect storm. Some of your children will weather this storm better than others, or I need to stress they might be masking it better too. So we just need to be aware of that. How are they coping? So what might be going on for them right now? Well, we always hear this term, they're going from being the big fish in their primary school to the small fish in their secondary school. Very often their secondary schools can be bigger buildings, and this can be really intimidating for your child to go into, and for you as a parent perhaps as well. They are known and may be popular with staff in their old school to being unsure and uncertain, as they have to learn to rebuild new relationships with teachers and students, and this takes time. They will have more subjects or new subjects to get their heads around, timetables to learn how to read, longer days, more homework, new friends, and this is pretty normal and expected that there be a change in friendships at this point, and we will chat more about this later. And probably throw in a bit of social media usage and issues this can bring up here for good measure, as well as exams to contend with and parents asking a gazillion questions. On top of that, puberty hits. So for a lot of adolescents, they can experience intense emotions with puberty, and the increase in this testosterone, both in boys and girls, can affect the brain associated with emotions, social acceptance and reward. For most teenage years, young people are largely working with the back of their brain, or their amygdala, which is associated with instinct and emotions, rather than the front, which is their prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex allows them to think logically and work out risks and consequences. So it's actually quite normal for them at this time to be more reactionary, potentially if they're feeling stressed or defensive, or begin to push the boundaries. So more stressful times may result in our teens displaying some really big emotions and be more dysregulated. So the advice we would give is to connect before you correct with your young person at this time. Validate their feelings, sit with them, and correct when the situation has calmed. On top of this, we're not going to finish there, is that young people's brain development is not completed until their 20s, which can be quite surprising to a lot of people. So their responses to life situations may seem inconsistent, may seem puzzling and frustrating to you as a parent. You might see for your child at this stage that they're more anxious, and in fact, very often as parents, we might be more anxious for them at this point in time as well. We know any life transition can be tricky. You're learning something new, it's a new experience, and your brain needs time to adjust, to figure it out, and to take it in. So we need to be patient and connect and be supportive with them in order for them to feel safe to explore and develop. At the very time they are growing in independence and may seem like they're pushing us away as parents, They also really, really need us to be present more and more, to be a secure base for them to link back in with after they've been bravely exploring the world. So they're not quite done with us yet, even though they might tell us that they are. So what's going on for you as a parent? Like, we need to acknowledge that there's a lot on for you as a parent as well during this transition period of time. You too have to get ready for a big change. You have to look at changing a routine. You might have been ready for the last 8 years, having a certain routine, going to a certain school. And that's going to change for you with earlier school mornings and different routes to schools. You're going to have to look at your school routes and take that into consideration, what maybe the traffic is like in the morning, or is there quicker ways to get to it? You mightn't have as much contact with the school as you would have had with the primary school and potentially other parents. Your WhatsApp groups may be gone, or they might be reduced as well. And your child's change in friends may mean a change or a loss in some cases in friends for you too. Getting used to your child's increase in homework and the pleasures this can bring to you, especially if your child is adverse to homework. Financial burdens, as we all know, having teenagers and at this stage can be quite financially burdensome, and getting ready for school as well can be a big cost, especially for secondary school. You know, you might be introduced to bullying for the first time potentially because it's a new situation and we're getting to learn new relationships. They're developing new friendships as well, and they may or may not work out. You'll have to develop new relationships with these teachers and not having the same level of connection with the school potentially. Again, like around the travel, how are we practically going to get there? Like, are we going to use a bus? Are we going to cycle? Are we going to use the car? You may feel your child is more anxious at this time. And then there's the need to allow your child a certain level of autonomy as well. They're going to increase their independence. Firstly, to say your experience of school, your own experiences of school, does positively or negatively be impacting on the ways you are meeting your child's needs. It can be. So remember that they are an individual, and to hear their concerns and their hopes, we do need to be in a neutral mindset. If you've had your own bad experience of school yourself, this might be impacting on how you talk or hear or perceive school related issues. And in turn, this could potentially be influencing your child unintendedly in their mindset and views. Equally, if you've had an amazing time at school and you found socializing easy and your child is quite worried about some aspects of the move, your memory of school being so positive may block you from not validating their feelings. So the guidance would be to try and listen without judgment, to check in and to validate their feelings. This may sound overwhelming, but change can be a very, very positive and necessary step. And um, in its experience in terms of it really helps us with our experience in terms of our growth and development. And it helps us to learn and develop it as we move forward into adulthood as well. So don't fear this change. It can be a time of great growth and development for both you and your child and your relationship too. So as a parent, you might ask, what do I actually have control of? So we would look at having the right tools for the job. Prepare, prepare, prepare. Some of us are more organized than others, and that's okay. However, if you want the first days and weeks to go well and to be successful for you and your child, you can't really go wrong with thinking about what you do have within your control. And they can be very simple things like, the school books. Have you got your school books, or, have you done the school book scheme? Has that been paid and sorted? If there's a tablet to be got, like some schools are different, they can be tablet and books, and are the books uploaded onto the tablet as well? Transport. This can be a big thing for young people because it's a change. So think about how you're going to get there, and practice taking the bus if they're going to take the bus. Practice it together. Because it can be simple things like even learning to tap the leap card if they're not used to taking the bus, or having their leap card topped up. If they're cycling and tend to cycle, practice doing the cycle route with them. Practice things like maybe reading a bus timetable, and using apps to show them when the bus is coming. And look at routes to the new school as well for yourself and for your child. That's going to help you in the morning time. With the uniform, have you been able to buy it yet? You know, that's something that you can easily do to be prepared for it. What I would also say is familiarize yourself with the school rules. So you don't want to be setting them up to fail when they go in by not having the right uniform, you know, and if your school is particularly strict. So chat with your child about maybe things like the school shoes, which I found myself could be a big bone of contention. And they may have it in their head that they might be able to wear a certain shoe or runner because they saw a couple of people doing on it. So maybe there will be a need to be a compromise there with them. So have a little discussion with them and look up around the school rules as well. A school bag, I never realized how important this was either until I got faced with it as well. They want to move away from maybe the big cumbersome like school bags they might have had in primary school. So maybe you need to have a discussion around that and think about what kind of bag they want to have. Lunch, very simple thing. Like, is there a canteen provided in your school? Do you need to have a card for it? Can you top up that card ahead of time so they're prepared for the first couple of days when they go in? What kind of lunch do they want to bring? And very simple things like what do they want to carry it in? Because they may no longer want to bring in a big, large lunchbox, you know. So have that discussion with them and prepare it ahead of time. So it's not a big argument in the days leading up or, you know, on the first morning when you're getting ready. A big thing that you do have control of and can be really, really helpful to young people is organization. So simple things like, you know, how do they organize themselves and for their lockers when they go in? So having coloured folders and match the subjects with a colour um, can be really helpful, and you'd put them all into one folder. So it's all items are in one location. So when they go to the locker, it's in the colour, and they know, say, geography is their blue folder, and they just pull that out, and everything they need for geography is in that folder. Equally, when they get their timetables, they can color code their timetable to this color folder as well to make it very easy and simple for them to look for that folder in their locker as well. There's actually great information on timetables and reading timetables on stepup.ie. So that's another good resource for parents, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on. Another thing you can do is get ready by creating a good morning routine. They need to be set up for the day. So a good breakfast, you know, getting up that bit earlier. Secondary schools tend to start earlier. So to think about that and what time you're going to get up and what kind of food they're going to eat. Are they going to leave their equipment left at the door the night before? You know, simple little practical things like that can make your morning very easy. And think about your timings of when they might need to leave the house or you might need to leave the house to bring them. Ahead of time, and this can be a very big one that's a bone of contention, is the bedtime routine and sleep. And we will talk a little bit more about it in a while. It can be a massive issue and a source of conflict. So nailing it before the transition and not waiting till the couple of days before or during the morning, the night before, would be best. So having a conversation and thinking about that. As well as social media, like they probably have their phones, maybe most of them at this point, but it can ramp up again as you know, the issues around social media. So because we don't know these new people and parents, we might need to do a reminder conversation around how we use it respectfully again, maybe pulling back on social media use and potentially looking to having that conversation maybe over the summer months, the phones are crept back into the bedroom, having that conversation earlier to remove the phones out of the room at night to protect their sleep and not blaming them. It's around what their friends might be doing and sending messages at a very late at night, and it's preventing them from sleeping. So it's not about blaming them, it's just helping them to have a better quality sleep. We can have conversations around hygiene and having discussions with our young people around their personal hygiene, and particularly taking more responsibility for it at this age. And this can be about sharing on a more regular basis or discussing around how maybe your daughter manages sanitary products while they're moving around the school. And you can also bring in the same conversation around the hygiene of their room and, of course, their sleep hygiene as well. So these are all very good conversations you can have ahead of time to get them prepared for the move. Another thing you can do is creating a good study space in your home. And this can be done ahead of time, and really it should be. It really is important in secondary school. And, you know, it really helps them when they're trying to do their homework that they have their safe space, or they have their space, their study space to go to. When we also think about control, we also have control of the hope that we project. So hope is this term um, that means that even if something is tricky, you can see a way through. And it lets your child know that you, as their parent or their carer, believe that they have an ability to manage these situations, albeit with some of your support, but you're letting them know that it will feel better in time. So having hope that this is going to be a positive experience and projecting that to your child is very important. You can encourage also an increase in independence and organisation in the lead up. I can't stress this enough. The move to secondary school is actually a very big step up and in expectation when they go into secondary school. And if you've given them a bit more expectation on daily tasks and in their activities prior to attending school, it can be really helpful. And that can be things like asking them, even ordering food in a restaurant, maybe going to the shop for you, doing more chores around the house. It can just be helpful to get them into that frame of mind. Our biggest thing we have in control is our ability to talk to them, to link in with them, and to connect with them on a regular basis, and to be curious rather than investigate what their day was like, maybe what their teachers are like. And I think that's really important because these are the people that they could link in with then. If you know what teachers they like or they seem to gel with, these are the people that you can kind of guide them to go and talk to if they have a concern or worry. All of this that we've discussed so far is leading to lifelong building blocks and learning how to strive forward and adapt this change and to blossom as individuals. And that's what we're aiming for after all, is to help them blossom. So one thing we addressed in one of our more recent exam anxiety webinars, and it is something I'd like to bring in here, is that in some instances for some of us with new experiences, we might find ourselves wanting to avoid. So some of us can try and hide from the experience, and avoiding something that makes us feel anxious in the long term results in an increase in the physical symptoms of anxiety, a loss in confidence in ourselves and our coping abilities, because our brains learn that avoiding makes the anxiety go away and that we don't give it a chance to prove to ourselves that we can actually handle these challenging things. So encourage them to be brave. Encourage them to step forward into positive situations, to say hello to the new person, because you never know what might unfold for them, and that you are there in the background to support them if they need it. You could also role model this behaviour to your child by you too trying to get involved in the new school community by volunteering or attending a parents' night. Sometimes when we have to face these new situations, it can allow us some sense of remembering what it must have been like for our children to have to go through this experience too. So maybe share that with them as well if you can. So a big part of resilience building is our sense of belonging. It's a very important aspect of resilience building. And it is important to all of us, but none more than our teens. So when we have a good relationship in our lives and they'll feel that they belong when they feel they belong in a group, in a club who accepts them as they are, this helps them to develop a good sense of self and their identity. In fact, it's an important aspect towards prevention or guarding against the impact of bullying behaviour as well. So we as parents can encourage them by chatting with them about good relationships. And this can be done ahead of them transitioning into school. It's important for them to have a sense of somewhere they belong, such as a club or an activity, where they can meet with people who are like-minded and potentially a good influence on them. It is also at this age that they can find something that they are good at, and we should try and foster that with them. And that could be something like their sport or art or music, but to support them to find a group where they can share their interests with. I would encourage you and strongly encourage you to do this, is to find out what extracurricular activities your child's new school runs and encourage them to join in. It's a really important part to help them feel like they belong in the new school community. And very often secondary schools have become great at running an array of activities before and after, and sometimes during lunch times. It's particularly aimed at first year students, I would say. And this is for the very reason to help them settle and mix. So find out from chatting maybe to others in your areas or looking up on the school website ways that your child might be able to get involved, and have this conversation with your child ahead of time so it doesn't seem like it's another thing for them to tackle when they go in. So it might be a simple like conversation around certain things you see that they do, and again having that positivity that it's great that they provide it and that you would like them to join an activity within their first couple of months of joining school. If they are struggling, link in early with the school and the teachers who can work with you and work with them to help them with this process if they're finding it tricky. So don't be afraid to reach out, and reach out early. We'll come back to the sleep issue now. So this is a really, really important thing for our young people, for all of us really, but for our young people at this age as well. We all feel better when we get good enough sleep. We can cope more, we feel better about ourselves, feel we have more energy. It's there to help our bodies repair and to rest. And a lack of sleep can really impact on our ability to learn and cope and our overall resilience levels. We actually have another great webinar that we have pre-recorded on sleep in your teens on our ISPCC platform, and you can watch this. So I'd highly recommend that if you do have a teen that seems to be struggling with this more than others, I'll guide you to that resource. It's really a great resource there that you can watch. But teens do need 8 to 10 hours sleep. And interestingly, there's a whole shift in their circadian rhythm that does occur around this age. So sometimes it might feel like you're in a battle with them around their sleep. However, a good bedtime routine introduced early is a good way to tackle this. So some tips that we would have would be around creating a consistent routine, because this signals to your body it's time to rest. And this could be simple things like taking a bath or a shower or reading a book, or if that's not for them, listening to maybe softer, more relaxing music coming up to that time. Having a consistent sleep and awake time can keep your rhythm at bay, and you will find it easier to fall asleep if you persist with doing this on a regular basis. Of course, the usual regular exercise during the day and during the week can really help you with your sleep. And having a conversation with them about reducing their caffeine so close to bedtime, because it can really hurt your sleep. And when we talk about caffeine, we're talking about our teas, our coffees, our fizzy drinks, but also minding those energy drinks that they might feel they need to drink when they're doing their sports. And when they're at this age, sports tend to be their training sessions tend to be a little bit later in the evening as well. So just to watch that with them as well. Again, back to the electronic devices. If possible, try and remove them out of the bedroom in the hours at least before bedtime, in the 1 hour before bedtime. The blue light that's emitted from the phones and the tablets stimulate the brain, and it inhibits the melatonin production. And this is our sleep hormone. So it really just takes us longer then to switch off when we do look at the screens too late. Look at their room, and this is something you can do together, and it really is key to it. Is their room environment cool? Is it dark? Is it quiet? They might need a sleep mask to help them sleep, or blackout curtains to help them sleep. Or it might be that they're the kind of person that needs the curtains opened in the morning and they'd like you to come in and open the curtains because they need that bright light to come in to help wake them up. So have that conversation with them. Keep the bed to the sleeping activity and avoid doing homework on it. And I have a child that loves to do this as well, so I feel the pain, but you provide a lovely desk and the bed is the place, but really the bed should be kept for a sleeping activity and the desk for their homework as well, if at all possible. It helps. Get them to make a list. If they seem to be a child that particularly is worried and concerned and anxious about things, get them to write it down. Empty their brain of what's worrying them, if they need to write down a journal, or if they've lots of things in their mind that they want to remember for the next day, get them a journal where they can jot down what they need to remember, and they know that it's safe, that it's recorded there somewhere else. And there's a range of mindful and breathing activities that you can find on YouTube and you can watch with your teen that they could practice, because it's really, really useful activity to help you relax and stay calm and help you drift off to sleep as well. So there's an array of them you can link in and look at. The next thing we're going to talk about this evening is friendship and conflict. And, it does come up a lot for this age. And, what we do need to do is allow them have these new experiences and these new relationships with people when they transition into school. It's actually very important. It's quite normal for friendships to change around this time. And as parents, this can actually make us feel anxious. And I often see parents trying to force friendships to stay together as they know the child really well and they know their parents really well and it feels safe for them. But this is your child's journey. Friendships that are meant to be will stay or come back together, and believe in your child that they can work this out. If any of us are forced to remain in friendships, it can grow into a toxic atmosphere. So, new experiences, to think about it like this, new experiences are good for all of us. It promotes brain growth and development, and this is done by stepping out of the comfort zone. So, support them to be with this by encouraging them to step out of the comfort zone and make those new friends. Get to know their new friends. Take turns offering to drive them places. Be the taxi for a while. It gives you great insight into the new friends. Offer your house for the odd time, that it could be used to get ready for the parties that they're potentially going to be invited to or the discos they might want to go to. So you might have a little group of them over to get ready together and offer to drive them to the disco then. Don't expect the first friends they meet in secondary school to particularly remain the consistent group. They can cling to a group when they first go into school for support in the early days. And when they then feel safe, they can explore different friendships. This is quite normal and it is actually healthy. Unfortunately, conflicts with friends, old and new at this age, can be commonplace, particularly after the honeymoon period has ended. So, believe it or not, they can learn an awful lot about themselves and others when they have to manage these situations. So, help them to learn about their own boundaries and their bottom lines. And this will differ from person to person depending on their values and their family values. Young people need a routine and they need structure to feel safe. So, helping them to set boundaries can help them feel safe. And boundaries are just clear rules that tell people how to behave or what their level of acceptance is in their friendship. So, how can I support them with these conflicts, you may ask? It can be very tricky. What we say is, if you can, stay neutral. Don't jump in or interject and try and listen without judgment. Listen out to what the bottom line was. After all the big emotion, and remember, we're going back to the hormones and what's going on for them, but let that die down and try and listen to the bottom line. Did someone feel excluded or behave a certain way maybe after they felt excluded? Maybe this is something that can be reflected on, maybe not in the moment, but afterwards as well. So it's good learning for the young person maybe to reflect on that. Validate their feelings, but don't add fuel to the fire. They really don't need it at this stage. They need help to be able to kind of just think about this in a logical sense and feel supported with that. Encourage your child to come up with their own solutions of telling instead of telling them what they should do or what they should say. And this can be hard for us, believe me. They need to learn these key skills for later in life too. So it's really beneficial for them to learn it now. Be curious to see if they feel it can be resolved in some way, shape, or form, or what they would like to see happen and how they would like the relationship to look going forward. Maybe they see behaviors in this person or this group that don't align with their values, or potentially that they aren't a positive friend. But they mightn't always want to tell you that, all those details because as their parent, they might still want to protect them a little bit and not give you all of that. So trust them that they're making that decision. If they come up with a solution, even if it takes a long time, the outcome for your child is more likely to be successful for them and they have learned a good life skill in the process too. Another thing we need to do is encourage their independence and responsibility. And I did speak about this a little bit earlier, but again, it is something that this jump is a big jump. An expectation that school expects them when they move into secondary school can be quite big. We're all hearing these stories of forgotten items, when they forget the items and it leads them to get into trouble when they go into school. And we as parents might feel it's a bit harsh, but in fact it is teaching them for later life. So, they mightn't forget it again. So, just support them with that piece of responsibility. And ways you can do this is when they start school, don't jump to initially pack the bag for them or remind them when the PE days are. Encourage them to think about this themselves, and you can support them with this by getting them to simply write out their timetable and what they need for each day. And this should be somewhere that they can see so that it becomes their responsibility to check in each day and not just another list for you to have up to remind them. So it's important that maybe it's somewhere in their room where they have to do a little checklist and it's not necessarily in your eyesight that you have to look at it. This list could be around looking at maybe what uniform they need for each day or sports equipment needed. Maybe if it's a lunch card they need to remember to bring, or a leap card, a travel card, what homework they need for each day, or simply down to like maybe cooking ingredients if they're doing home economics on a certain day. So having a structure and being organized can set them up for a good day ahead. So encourage it. And again, going back to that colour folders ideas, it really is a game changer. And it really helps them to know that they have all the items that they need in one folder and ready to take out. And it keeps them tidy and neat and organised. It can be really helpful. So you can help support them with that. I really know that as a parent, we want to jump in and save the day. And at times, they have to learn to be able to cope with this themselves. So it is a necessary life skill. So, maybe support them with it, but don't take it over for them. They have to learn it at some stage. Another thing we need to do, and this is the nice side, foster relaxation time and fun. It really is important. And we can forget that when we're talking about school and we're talking about transition and exams. But, they need time to relax. They need time to socialize. It's so important for all of us to find healthy ways to blow off steam or just take time to be ourselves. Exams and studies are important, but the need to be, to find a life balance for fun and relaxations and having a laugh is just as important. There's so much pressure, and young people can feel so much pressure to succeed earlier and earlier. And they can often feel that they have this need to have things figured out so young now. So they can find it hard to relax. So helping them you can help them to find these kind of key skills by helping to introduce some mindfulness exercises, some breathing exercises, or gentle music or movement. Gentle movement as well can be a really important part of stress and anxiety reduction, as well as a positive way to boost resilience. And again, going back to the YouTube and finding those breathing and mindfulness exercises, and they really only take a couple of minutes to watch or listen to, but they're so beneficial and they're a great lifelong practice. Like, I often feel nervous before big exams myself or big presentations, and I really feel the breathing exercises can just really help to slow down the heart rate and calm the mind before you begin the process. Again, another thing that we just as parents need to be mindful of is trying not to get caught in the comparison trap. And this can be easily influenced by social media, and sometimes we don't realize that. Looking at what my child should be able to do by now, or what they should achieve by now. And the child can receive these messages by social media and friend groups as well. So it can also, happen when we surround ourselves with certain people as well. And this level of unhealthy expectation can be placed on you and your child. Just remember, your child is unique and an individual, and have hope that with your guidance they will forge their own path. It would be really quite boring if we all ended up being the same people or doing the same things. So foster that independence and have some fun with them. Your child's sense of connection and belonging is very, very high at this time in their life, and it can impact on their mental health and self-esteem. At the very time they can seem like they're pushing us away, they possibly need us more than ever. So continue to find moments to chat and have fun together. And this can be a time where potentially you can do a shared activity to have some fun together, to connect. It's really, really important. Maybe when they come out of school, our go-to would be to bombard them with a million questions, but just remain curious about their day and kind of feel like they take that pressure off. Expect them to be tired. Remember the start of junior infants and how it took them time, maybe after the Christmas break, to kind of feel less tired. It's quite similar again, and allow for that space. You know your child best. This will take time, and your child will need time to adjust. So acknowledge this, be patient with them and yourself. Have check-in hot chocolates to regroup. And we have another webinar actually on keeping connected in the tween years that you might want to look at too, and that's in our webinar library as well. So we have talked a lot about, before I hand you over to Victoria, we did talk a lot about different webinars that we do have, but you can find them on our ispcc.ie /webinars. And for any schools joining us tonight, more information on our Smart Move School Transition Programme can be found on www.ispcc.ie /smart-moves. If you have a young person that is struggling with anxiety, we do have a number of online digital mental health and wellbeing programs, so please do reach out to us. Planet's Youth and their Step Up website is another useful resource there for you, and they have a parent's handbook as well. And like I said earlier, they have great tips and tools on being organised for your and reading timetables and things like that as well. So it's another great resource. And of course, you have TUSLA education support services and resources that can be found on tusla.ie. I'll hand you over to Victoria, who's now going to speak to you about young people with special educational needs. Thank you, Victoria.
Oh, thanks so much, Niamh. Okay, so so I'm just going to talk to you. A lot of what Niamh has already talked about is so relevant for our children who are neurodivergent or who have educational differences, disabilities. So I just want to talk through about that. We already know that it's in the news quite a bit as well when we're talking about school placements, etc. So it's just to be able to jump in to have a few tips and skills around that, okay? And just to go through a few resources and guidance that might make this transition just a little bit smoother and just also kind of empowering for us as well, because it can be very difficult. So first, some of the terminology, I suppose, because like it is, we're hearing all these words now and we are kind of moving into a more neuroaffirmative approach. So when we're talking about school transitions, so we might mention things like neurodivergence, like that word. And what is that? That just means different ways of thinking. And for people who are neurodivergent, which could include, children and young people who have autism, ADHD, dyscalculia, dyslexia, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, transitions can really bring a lot of uncertainty. And as we discussed, that's for all children and young people. But especially if you really, if you're somebody who, and usually neurodivergent or have intellectual differences, really, are very they love their routines, and having a big transition like this, going to a whole new place, as Niamh's already talked about, there's so many differences that comes with that. So it's just being aware of it. And intellectual disability, on the other hand, that usually refers to somebody who maybe needs a little bit more support with tasks like learning and new information and managing routines or their communication needs. So it's important to remember this. It doesn't mean that there's a lack of potential. It simply means that we need to adapt in how we teach and support so that our child or young person can really thrive even with this big new world and this big new transition coming up. So understanding how does your child or your young person experience the world? This will help them to prepare both, for this big, huge change that's coming to them, but also for yourself, because there's so much that comes with that. And especially when we have a child who's maybe neurodivergent or has an intellectual differences, we play such a huge part in their world. And we really have to be, I suppose we're so used to being advocates for them. And we have so many questions. And as Niamh said earlier on, that anxiety is there for us. So it's just to know that, not all transitions can be these big milestones from going from one school into another. Sometimes, you're a parent who's actually worried about this really small changes that could be happening as well, like a new teacher or the classroom. Because for some children, if we're talking about neurodivergence or intellectual differences, you might be in the same school, but that there's going to be a new teacher, or, there is going to be a change in the structure in the day. So it's just so important to plan for these and to keep revisiting the strategies that we've already talked about, that Niamh's mentioned as well, because it's so relevant. So then some supports that we have for when we're kind of looking at special schools or special classes or units in a mainstream. So if you're exploring this with for your child or a young person, when we're looking at special schools, class placements, there's a few steps just to be aware of. So first of all is the Special Educational Needs Organizer, or the SENO. So this is a key person, and they're usually assigned through the NCSE, and they help families families find appropriate placements. So whether it's a mainstream school, special class, or a unit in a mainstream school, so they're going to be your guide through the application process. And even with regards to things like school transport, because as Niamh mentioned earlier on, that's a big, huge transition for a lot of children and young people. But when you're making a move, if you are in a special school setting, just to know even that there are transport options out there, and you want to be able to find which one's going to be the most supportive for your child. Again, the CNO is the best person to contact for this. They also can kind of coordinate some other kind of supports, like, like SNA hours or even assistive technology. So my tip definitely is contact your local CNO as early as possible. Again, it's not to panic you, it's just to be kind of aware that this person is somebody you can go to ask questions. And they've heard it all before. So there is no such thing as a stupid question when we're trying to make this big move for a child or young person. The other thing then is to just try to make sure to have all your kind of clinical reports or documents at hand, because this is a time when, as we mentioned, there's so much anxiety and there's so much going on, and you're going to be asked sometimes for a lot of different documents. So just having, you probably already do, but having your binder easy, close at hand, that has, your child's reports, especially if we're talking about things like a diagnosis or identification. So if your child is part of a Children's Disability Network team, or has a private report, so if you went to a private psychologist, so these professionals, they can help you with all of this as well, and they also can be a really good source for recommendations when we're talking about school placements and what does your child or young person need when you're going into a new school placement. So again, making sure those reports are kind of close at hand, and making sure as well that you know who you can contact within the disability network teams or your private psychologist, so you can talk to them about this as well, because they've been through it, and they're going to be really, they want to help. And then as well with the application process, so many special schools and classes, they do have their own timeline. So again, it's just being aware of that. And it's as I mentioned earlier, we're an advocate for a child or young person when it comes to these big transitions. So, there's just no harm in, phoning the school, going to the school website, that kind of thing, and just seeing, when did their applications open, and go directly to the school and look for, well, what do they need? What documentation are they going to be asking you for? So you can get all that stuff sorted. And again, the school websites do usually always have the things like the policies, and it's just as beneficial as possible to try to apply early. Again, it's not to panic you, but it's just that you can then tick that off your box of your to-do list. And as Niamh mentioned earlier, it's about that then being able to prepare your child for this transition. And the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you'll be able to answer their questions. And then as well, if you are struggling to find a place, because that is a hot button topic at the moment, I'm really, really conscientious of that. If you are struggling to find a place, don't hesitate to reach out to your CNO, as I said, or a disability network team, but also there are advocacy groups. So there's As I Am, and there's also Inclusion Ireland. So they've again been through it all before, and they have a lot of good advice. And sometimes as well, they even have like kind of numbers that some schools are going to have for accepting places in special schools, special classes, that kind of thing. So just kind of be conscientious of that. And then the transition into a special school. So if we're talking about special schools, and this also is kind of applicable for special classes, even though special schools tend to have smaller classes, and they usually are more likely to have consistent staff, greater flexibility, the transitions still need careful planning. So one key point is that support should be individualized and tailored to your child's pace and needs. And that's something you're probably already doing and you're so aware of. But I suppose it's to kind of put it out there so that you're not afraid to do that for your child. Because I know myself that a lot of times parents are talking about, I don't want to be bothering them with this, or I feel like I've phoned so many times, or I've done this so many times. It's okay, because at the end of the day, you're making sure that your child's going to have the best opportunity to go somewhere where the staff there will know your child, because you know them best. So you want to share that information. So don't be afraid to kind of share the information of going, look, my child Johnny is going to your school, and I just want you to know that he has a lot of sensory needs and a lot of triggers in this area. The school uniform is something that is really going to be a bother for him. So I've gotten him now to being able to wear the tracksuit pants. Can he wear them on an ongoing basis? I'll work on the other school pants with him, but right now this is where we're at. Or ask for visual supports. Their schools are really very comfortable with being able to kind of even just have a little tour around around the school, bring Johnny along and be able to have a look and see if that's going to, you know, so he knows what the layout of the school, those types of things. Don't be afraid or hesitate to ask as well if you can be a part of any planning meetings. So if they're talking about meeting with any professionals who are already working with your child, don't hesitate to say, well, I'd like to be a part of that as well. And then just some supports available. You know, again, some of you might already be familiar with these services because they're the where you went to get your identification or diagnosis. But it's just to know that these are the organizations where there's so many great resources. So NEPS, the National Educational Psychology Services, if you type that into Google, you'll see their website, and they have a lot of resources, a lot of really nice PDFs and information. The school passport or transition profile for sharing with your new teachers is also a really nice document to have, and it can be just a one-pager, and it kind of includes everything that we talked about a little bit just a few minutes ago about, well, what do you want the teacher to know about your child? What are their strengths? What are they really good at? You know, maybe Johnny is so good at laminating and loves printing things out and loves taking pictures, so that's something that we know can regulate Johnny, so we want the teacher to be aware of that. If he's having a difficult day, let's do a little bit of that. We know that the SNR teacher can do that with him, and that's gonna help calm things down. The individual education plans as well, a lot of schools are so familiar with that, and they'll probably ask you about that. But again, it's just a good way to know what your child's goals are, and so that the school are aware of what their goals are, because every child is going to be different, and especially when we're talking about neurodivergent children or children with intellectual differences, there is going to be sometimes a difference in what we want for them. Maybe it is the fact that we're like, okay, actually, as Niamh's talked about earlier on, some of that independence, maybe it is going to be the fact that it would be really, really great if little Johnny was able to go into the classroom by himself and take his seat and without having an SNA or a teacher with him. And that's the goal for him this year, and we want to work on that. And then looking at summer programs for extended support during the holidays, please do, because they are out there. There is support there, so that you can have this a little bit of an extra kind of chance to get things organized before your child goes into either, again, mainstream school with maybe a unit, or a special school or a special class. Okay. And then we just have a few resources there. Now, there seems like a lot, but again, all of this is recorded, so you'll have time to look at it, but it's just some recommendations for yourselves. So there's some really lovely books there that I myself would use with clients. I just think they're a nice resource. They're all you know, pretty inexpensive. They are available in libraries, as well as, you know, being able to order on Amazon or go to your local bookstore. They're pretty popular. And then some resources there as well for some of the services that I mentioned, like As I Am, fantastic. They've really lovely, nice resources that you can print out yourself. Enable Ireland as well, like their websites have a good few, again, printable resources, and then also links to where you can go. So there's a few pieces there as well. Okay, it's a lot though, and it can feel a lot at this time sometimes. So do take your time to just go, what works for me best as a parent, as Niamh mentioned earlier, because this is a lot of anxiety for yourself too. So if you're somebody who does better with a book, great. If you're somebody who does better with a podcast, there are those podcasts out there that you'll be able to look at and get your information for yourself. Okay, so now we're just do a little bit of just a wrap up. So just a few final tips, just to keep in mind. Okay, so some things for us to remember, as Niamh mentioned. The start preparing early if you can. Again, not to panic you, but it's if you start preparing early, you can do it at a slower pace. You can be kind of mindful when you're doing it as well. And it also gives you enough time that if stuff goes wrong, because stuff will always go wrong, it's so normal. If it goes wrong, you're able to come up with a backup plan. So that's why, again, start preparing early can be really, really helpful. And it can just help your child to kind of get into the conversation about it. And so it's not so new for them, and they can start to have a chance to voice their opinions, especially for children, as I mentioned earlier, about neurodivergent and intellectual differences. If there's a processing error, if a child, you know, takes a little bit of time to process things, which a lot of children do, it means that when you're having that conversation on an ongoing basis, they might not voice a problem the first conversation, but maybe the second or third time it gets brought up, then they start bringing you kind of questions. So that's another reason why it's good. As Niamh said as well, great recommendation, keep routines predictable. A lot of times parents kind of feel, it's the summer holidays, let's take a break. You know, of course, definitely do. But it's no harm to, as you start getting closer to the starting point for school, to start getting into that routine. And even if possible at weekends, to try to keep it to, as much as you can, to the usual routine, because this keeps things predictable. And we know that children really do like predictability, especially if you're feeling a little bit anxious, or brains thrive on predictability. So yeah, any lead up to change, let's keep a kind of predictive routine. And then validate. We talked about this, but it's just validate their feelings and emotions. Like, we know ourselves, if we're feeling something and someone comes up to you and says, you know, God, that does sound tough. That's all we need sometimes. You don't need somebody to kind of say like, oh, well, have you tried this, this, and this? It's just nice sometimes to hear that it is big and scary, but I'm here and I'm wanting to listen. You know, that's sometimes all kids just really need from us. And then, yeah, remember as well that relationships matter the most. So no plan is perfect. Like, I know myself, even Siobhan, the amount of times that we talk about these, you know, school transitions, or we have parents talking to us, or kids that we're working with, there is no perfect plan. We're just talking about a few tips that we know can work. So the most important thing is, as Niamh mentioned earlier, that connection piece, and having empathy when you can, and that preparation, and just working with your child as best they can. You know your child best. You're the expert. So make the plan work for yourselves. Don't try to make things too hard on yourself by comparing or doing what you think should be done. Go at your own pace. And connection and belonging, that's the goal that we're really trying to work at. And remember, it's always about good enough parenting, not perfect. That's the gold standard. The good enough is what we're looking for. Okay, if we can remember that, we're doing great. So I think now I'm going to hand yourselves back to Siobhan. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much, Victoria, and thank you, Niamh, as well. You both have covered a huge amount of information here this evening, so much. And Victoria, you've tidied it up and summed it up nicely at the end there, which is fantastic. You know, looking at routines, the importance of prepare. Niamh, you spoke about sleep, friendships, conflict, relationships, having fun. So a huge amount. So I really hope that you're attending here this evening, you have gained some tips and tools that will help you support your child as they transition to secondary school, and also the different support services that are available to yourselves. What I'm just going to do now, we are going to pop up a quick poll. If you wouldn't mind just taking a second or two to complete it, it'd be really good to get your feedback on tonight's webinar, and it helps inform our services as well. So we're going to go into Q&A now in a minute. So just a reminder, if you do have any questions for Niamh or for Victoria, pop it up into the Q&A function box up at the top of your screen. While we're doing that, I'm just going to remind you again of the supports that are available both to yourselves and to your young person. We've got Childline.ie, which is there for young people to access via the phone or via chat. We have our Ask the Team, where they can ask us a question about anything they want. The support line is there for parents if they'd like to call and have a chat with one of our therapeutic support workers. And we have our digital mental health and well-being programs for both young people aged 15 plus, and for parents also around supporting them around anxiety. So we're going to go into Q&A. So I'm just going to check and see what we have here, guys. So, okay, so we have a question here. My daughter is going into a secondary school where she doesn't know anybody. Do you have any advice? Niamh, I might give that one to yourself.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Siobhan. Yeah, I think, yeah, that can be tricky. You know, because sometimes when young people move, they tend to go maybe as a couple of girls or boys, or a mixture, into one school or the other. Like, so when they end up on their own, that can be a little bit tricky, but it can be manageable in terms of like how we prepare them, like we said tonight. So I think one thing that would be so important for this young person would be that piece in terms of trying to get them involved in extracurricular activities involved within the school very early. And like, they mightn't be sports minded, but generally schools have gone absolutely brilliant to provide other activities like singing or arts and crafts or quizzes and, you know, things like that. So you can join little teams, and they don't have to be overly competitive. So really, I would stress to this parent to find out what these extracurricular activities are. Have that conversation with your young person ahead of time, because they can push back a little bit and just say, look, I'd like you to do this. I'd like you to try it, you know, because it will be helpful for you. So when they go in, then maybe you can ask, have they given you a list of activities? Have they had given a talk to you about the different activities? Generally, the schools will actually do have that talk with them about what's going on in the school. So ask them, be curious about it, and then try and say, oh, you'd like that, don't you? You like to do a bit of baking, you do like a singing, or you like hockey or whatever, and encourage them to join it and to be brave and step forward, because very often that's probably where you will find other young people that are in a similar boat, because she or he will or the girl, isn't it, will not be alone. There will be another child in that similar boat. And I think they just have to be open-minded and hopeful that, you know, it will work out for them as well, but they do need to kind of push themselves that little bit more to join in those extracurricular activities.
Great, thanks, Niamh. Yeah, so join the activities and support her and keep her linked in with the activities as well. Fantastic. Another one here, and I've heard about this information password, all about me. What is it? Victoria, you actually spoke a little bit about that, so maybe I might hand that one over to yourself. So the all about me.
Thanks, Siobhan. Yeah, the all about me. So that is something that is a kind of new enough terminology. It used to be called a behavioral support plan, and now with the new affirmative approach, we're looking at an all about me, or an information passport is still what people are, it's the terminology you might kind of hear, and that's what that basically is a document. It can be a one pager, it can be a bit more about your child, and it's just, it can sometimes have their little picture, sometimes it can be a drawing or an animation, and it's just, well, what do they like Johnny's all about me might have Johnny's this is Johnny, he's this age, you know, and then what are Johnny's likes, what is his interests, what are his strengths, you know, what, you know, he's really good at this, really good at that. Then we kind of go into, well, what does Johnny not like? What are going to be the things that you do not want to do with Johnny if you're an adult working with Johnny, if you're a teacher in a classroom, that we want to be kind of really conscious of, because we want to make sure that Johnny has a chance to thrive. So maybe Johnny really hates loud noises, so we're going to be conscious that maybe Johnny won't want to go to the hall because that's a really echoing space. So we're just, yeah, we really want to make sure that all those things, especially if you're the parent, like if you know that when Johnny is really quiet, if he's super quiet and he hasn't said anything, it might not be that he's actually in, you know, fine form and he's actually okay. Maybe it's actually that his body's telling him he's a bit unsafe and he's actually a bit scared right now, and he's not going to be taking in anything of the lesson, and maybe that's the time that the teacher SNA needs to check in on him. So all of that kind of stuff can go into an all about me, and it's something that you can collaborate with your, if you're with a national disability team, if you've had a professional psychologist or any professional member, you know, of that kind of discipline working with you, get their advice on that as well. But yeah, so but it can be something you do at home as well, lads. You know, it doesn't have to be, you can just do, if you know yourself, you have a piece of paper, it can just even be just writing there out, as I said, the strengths, what are their kind of needs for support, and you want the school to be so aware of that, so you can do it yourself even if you want.
Great, thanks, Victoria. Look, we've got another good few coming in here now, so again, this might be directed at yourself. Hi, just a question about assistive technology for kids with special needs. Should I get onto the SENO or NEPs regarding this, and should I wait until he is in secondary school and settle in, or do I do it now?
Oh, great question. And I think a lot of parents have that question, actually, to be honest, with assistive technology. Get on to both. Both have really good resources. And I would say with assistive technology, it is never too early to start getting them used to it. So if you have a computer at home, a laptop at home, get them out, start getting them writing maybe the shopping list, that you're going to get them into writing out the shopping list for the week and getting them used to the touch typing. Or again, assistive technology doesn't always just mean typing. It can be use of a C-pen, which is a device that scans the words on a page and is able to let the child know then the spelling or what the word means, that kind of a piece. So really it's getting them used to it as soon as they can. And again, not to scare you, it's not to say that they have to be doing it right now, but it's just to get yourself familiar as well with how fast are they with typing, how familiar are they with it. A lot of kids as well don't like having to use assistive technology in their class because you know, it makes them feel different. So that's something as well you're going to want to see about your child, is that are they going to be happy to use it in the classroom? If they're not, that's fine. their teacher should be happy to be able to let them do it at home, any work or homework, etc., and they can print it out and bring it in, or they can send it to the teacher via email. So basically, definitely get on to the NCSS SE and get on to your NEPs for any help, but also Deirdre Madden in the University College Cork does free webinars and has a whole load of resources to be able to help support you with ideas for really kid-friendly ways of learning how to type, of about the grants as well that are involved for assistive technology that sometimes schools maybe aren't so aware of, and then just more information on that as well. So that's my kind of yeah, where I would go myself even for resources. It's really helpful. I hope that answered the question.
Great, thanks, Victoria. Some great tips there. Another one, worried about my ADHD son and his phone at school. How will we manage this, please?
I can jump in there because I actually had this recently. So I'm wondering,
Okay.
when you say how will we manage? I'm guessing with ADHD, and the reason you mentioned that is because his concentration isn't fantastic. So he probably uses the phone as a safety tool, almost, is a way to be able to keep him interested in what he's doing around him, in the sense that if he's in class and he's kind of getting bored and he's drifting off, the phone is a really nice safety way of being able to go to something he's interested in, and that can be really, really tricky. So it is about trying to think of making sure his school is aware of less is more sometimes, that maybe he might need a movement break instead. Maybe he, you know, especially when he goes to the school, and if they don't allow phones, which is going to be in most schools, if not this year, actually, it's coming up where all schools in Ireland are going to be a lot stricter on their policy with phones. So if he doesn't like to be without his phone, it's coming up with another idea to be able to help him feel safe in the classroom, that when he's starting to drift, what can he do instead? Sometimes practicing mindfulness, but is in a helpful way. Sometimes some breathing exercises. Sometimes as well, it's just making sure that he has a pen and paper to be able to do a little bit of doodling, and that it's okay for him to come back then into the lesson once he's had maybe a little bit of a brain break, or like that again, linking with the teacher and saying he might ask you to go to the bathroom or just go for a little walk around, and to come back because he needs that movement to help him. So it's just trying to be a bit creative with it. But again, for all parents, it is to be aware that, yeah, they are going to be much stricter with phones. So for any kids who use that as their kind of safety mechanism when they're in the class, you might need to start looking at other ways around that.
Okay, great, Victoria. Another one here, if they're not interested in extra activities, what do you suggest? I think that might have been following on from yourself, Niamh.
Yeah, I suppose the goal here is maybe to have the conversation with them earlier about that, because I suppose the goal is that, like, particularly in the first question that we got around them being kind of on their own, and maybe, you know, that risk of kind of a little bit of isolation, it would be important that, you know, well, what do they want to see here? What do they want to see happen? What would they like their school experience to be like? I suppose that's somewhere where you can start with them. And, you know, if they feel that they do want to make friends, if they feel they do want to have a group, you know, it might be, well, then helping them to come up with solutions. Well, how do they think that might happen for them? Like, what ways might that happen for them? Do you know? So I think it's really important to sit down, because they might actually have some great ideas. You know, around putting up, maybe, I don't know, if they're into music, they might want to kind of see, could they put up a call to make a band in the school? There might be things not happening in your school that maybe if your young person goes to their year head and suggests maybe a certain group or a certain activity, there might be scope to put it in place. I know they would have been quite good in my daughter's school around that as well. So I suppose where your starting point is definitely to have that conversation with them around what they want their school experience to look like, what they envision it to look like, and then maybe going back to that solution focus, let them think about coming up with their own solutions. And it mightn't happen straight away, as we said, it might take them a little bit of time, but in order for that to be successful for them, it's better that they come up with a solution. And they might need to be a bit of trial and error there, you know, like, before they come up with that solution themselves as well. So sometimes they might need to feel that, well, it's not happening for me here now, and they might come back and they might be a little bit upset about that. And you're saying, like, instead of lecturing, saying, I told you so, maybe you'll say, well, what else do you think you'd like to try here? So again, it's that connect and those conversations. It's really going back to that, that they feel that they do have you and other support people that they can link into, especially if they don't think these group activities are for them, and that's okay. But it's just, yeah, having those conversations, but encouraging them also to be brave, and how they might demonstrate that braveness and that courage to link in with people and be brave.
Great, thanks, Niamh. We just have two more questions here. Hi, if my son has difficulty with Irish language, will it be noticed by his school to not go in the ordinary Irish level?
That's a great question about Irish exemption. So this is one of those kind of trickier questions because it's very dependent on the individual. What I'll say is that if you were, what I'm guessing that this parent might be asking around is about the Irish exemption thing. So I'm just going to say that with schools, it is up to the schools now regarding kind of Irish exemptions in a way that it's all schools now are kind of looking at needs based of where the support's needed. So your school, especially at primary school level, if there's already a diagnosis or identification, that conversation is going to come up around that. If it's not, if we're talking here that there has been no identification or a diagnosis, and you're worried that your child is maybe not, the Irish just maybe isn't where their strengths are at, and they need a lot of support, your school might not have noticed it only because they might actually be doing okay, and it might just be something that they're struggling with at home and that you as the parent know about that. So it's no harm having the conversation. Talk to the teacher and just say, look, I'm worried about about Irish, and I'm just wondering about it, because it's 9 times out of 10 the teacher will actually probably go, I actually didn't know. Again, I keep using poor Johnny. I hope there's no Johnnies on the call, or parents with Johnnies at home, but yeah, just say that I actually didn't know that Johnny was struggling, or he's actually been doing okay in this. They want to hear that from you, and then they can have a conversation about, well, is it about looking at the exemption, or is it looking at supports or tutoring for him as well? So yeah, so I always kind of say that anyway. We never assume, because teachers do have so much on their plate. So it's always a good idea to just go in and have a conversation first. I hope that answered that question though for you.
Great, thanks a million, Victoria. And then the last question in here is, my child will be going into mainstream as no room in the ASD class. How can I help make this work for the best?
This is a really tricky situation. I'm sorry to hear that first, just to say that, because it does suck, and it's really unfair. The best thing that you can do in this situation, the resources that we mentioned, it's not to just fob you off right now and say that, but definitely there's some really lovely things out there that can give you kind of tips and skills of what to do and help to manage that. A lot of the times, to keep it in your head as well, that when we talk about units or special classes, most of the time we are looking at being able to have a space where the child or young person can go to kind of have that little bit of a break, and to try to have that room to regulate from the mainstream class. And we're also talking a lot as well about inclusion. So most of the time, if your child is attending a unit or a special class of some sort, they are going to have times where they're in the mainstream class. So basically what I'm trying to say there is that, well, we think about, well, what would they be getting if they were in a unit? What would they be getting if they were in that class? And can we provide that in the mainstream setting? Most of the time, it is a yes. If it is a movement break, if it is the fact that sorry now lads, but if it is the fact that little Johnny needs to have a bit of, there's too many people in the classroom, or he's going to need that little bit of extra support, and you're worried about, is there an SNA who's going to be able to give a bit of extra help or time? So thinking about it, well, what, again, like that, have that question in your head. What would I hope that Johnny would get from being in that class? And again, it's not to say that this year. Keep trying as well, and again, those supports that I've mentioned, they'll kind of give you tips and skills on how to do that, because it doesn't mean that he's going to not have that class for the rest of his school year. So it's just to keep that in mind as well. But what is he not, what is he not going to get in the mainstream class that you're worried about? And have that conversation with the teacher, and always as well link in with the professionals who you've been working with, again, whether it's NEPS or disability team, because sometimes it is just down to them maybe writing a letter or having some recommendations for the teacher so that they can follow that as well. I hope that makes sense.
Great. And just one last one, guys. I heard that it is presumed that a child in an autism class will do the L2LP and not necessarily sit the junior cert. Do parents have a say in this if teachers and parents think they are more able?
I hope you don't mind me of me just jumping in here because this is something I'm kind of passionate about. But no, yeah, of course you have a say, a say in it. There is no assumptions when we're talking about autism, neurodiversity of any sort, or intellectual differences. There should never be an assumption. It's really difficult, of course, when you're in school and you're a teacher and you're trying to manage all of this, and you have all and teachers are so good at doing this as well. If there was an assumption, it probably was done, by accident or by the fact that they were reading it from maybe a report or something like that. So again, jump in. If you feel that your child is either well capable, you think actually no, this is fine, or that no, this would be too much, you jump in. I mentioned it earlier about having to be an advocate, and it's all parents have to do that for their children. It's part of being a parent. It's really difficult, but I think especially if you have a child with intellectual differences or neurodivergence, it's even more so that you sometimes have to be their voice, because they will find it very difficult to step in and say actually no or yes to certain things. So it's okay for you to get involved with that. And if your child is older, having them, so if they're comfortable to do so, having them being part of that conversation can really help get it across the line as well. So that's just a recommendation too. That sometimes, some young people would be more than happy to come to those meetings as well, even if it is just to sit there, but it's just for them to be able to get to say their piece. If not, that's fine. You as the parent totally have a say in that, and again, have that conversation with the school, because again, 9 times out of 10 teachers, they want to hear this back, they want to have this feedback, and this and they want the children to do well, so they want to be able to have this information, and then you can come up with a workaround. So it is all about that collaboration piece. The hardest part usually is just the time. It does take a lot of time for yourself and energy, so it's looking after yourself in that as well, because it can be a very frustrating time.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you so much, Victoria. And that concludes all the questions that we have in. And I'd just like to say thank you so much to Niamh and to Victoria, and for all the information that you provided here this evening for everybody. Just in relation to the poll, I think some people might have had issues with it, so just apologies around that as well. So I'd like to say thank you, everybody, and have a lovely evening.